Okay, welcome back everybody to season 2 of Tea Time. We are back. We're very excited to have you all listening and watching. I've got my co-host here, Adrienne D'Alessio, and we have another special guest for you today. We have the Director of Instruction from Credit Valley Golf and Country Club, Casey Ward. Welcome, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited to dig into some teaching and coaching stuff with you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I guess just to kick things off right away, we'll just dive right in. Do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself and what kind of led you in your career as a golfer and a golf instructor?
Absolutely. A bit of like a circuitous route to where I am now. Maybe not circuitous, but definitely not planned in the least. Kind of grew up golfing like many of us professionals did, and then basically had no intentions ever of doing this, of being a PGA of Canada professional or coaching or anything like that. I have a master's in kinesiology and biomechanics, and so my kind of career aspirations were I desperately wanted to design golf shoes in like the worst way. So I did during my master's, it was all golf-related biomechanics, and I did a project for Nike Golf and on footwear, and it was really cool. I went down to the oven in Texas when it was still there, and like I was kind of on the path to doing like this golf shoe and biomechanics stuff. And anyways, long story short, the oven basically like shut down a couple months later. And so I was doing more like some more like biomechanics stuff after I finished my master's, and I got into coaching with Golf Ontario and Team Ontario. They're like high performance teams, and kind of found out that I really enjoyed it. I've been playing a lot of golf, just as an amateur, and then when I started to coach, it was like all of a sudden, what had been just like mine and like the enjoyment that I took from the game was all of a sudden I got just as much fulfillment, if not more, out of like seeing other people improve. Mm-hmm. Kind of, got the bug a little bit, but I didn't want to, I was really enjoying amateur golf and like the community, and just like had a pretty good like start to like a mid-am kind of career, if you can call like not actually making any money at golf a career, but I didn't want to give that up, and I chatted with Adam Cherry, who was he was the director of Credit Valley, or director of golf at Credit Valley at the time, and we just chatted, and I wanted to do kind of like more biomechanics stuff. I was trying to integrate myself maybe into doing something like that, like at a course, and like kind of bringing biomechanics to the people. At that time, it wasn't what it is today. And sort of at the end of that conversation, he was like, well, if you ever want to turn professional, like you could have a job here. I was like, oh, thanks, but no thanks. Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to play my amateur golf and whatnot. Anyways, like long story short, basically, probably after like going in circles for a few months, I came back to him and was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I've been at Credit Valley for the last, I think this is like year 9 maybe, and kind of knew that I wanted to teach and coach, and so went on that pathway, and very quickly was just teaching full time.
Cool.
Love that.
Yeah.
Did you ever want to go into that route of designing shoes just for a different company, or was that just the one?
No, it didn't need to be. It didn't necessarily need to be like Nike. I just had inroads there, and actually, I found out that it was really challenging as a Canadian to get a job. Like all of these companies are based basically based in the U.S., and quickly discovered that it would probably be more challenging than I thought to get in with one of those companies. Yeah.
That's fair.
Cool. Yeah.
Still really cool though. You can design our shoes whenever you want.
Nice. So you've been at Credit Valley for 9 years. Obviously you've grown into the director of instruction role a little bit. And I think a little bit of a misconception for that role, because I'm obviously in the same role here, is that we kind of just roll in, we teach private lessons, and we leave, right? Like I feel like half the people still kind of feel like that's the job. So maybe could you just like from 10,000 feet, just maybe explain what the role is in addition to obviously teaching lessons.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it is a lot more than just rolling in. I mean, there's obviously, and you and Adrienne do a great job of, I know you put out a ton of programs and that kind of thing, and it's overseeing like everything to do with basically like player development. And it's not just these like one-off lessons. It's more, I think we'd probably all call ourselves like a, coach, which is a little bit more all-encompassing to do with someone's development. And so there's like kind of that in itself it's being on the clock a lot for different players. And then it's like designing, I mean, I spent a lot of time, as you both probably do, designing academy programs, group stuff and trying to get creative with it. And so that takes a lot of time on the back end to do all that like planning and preparation, and that's a lot of fun. I always think it's just a big puzzle. Sit down with like months worth of calendars, and you're just trying to fit everything in. So and then in addition, I guess like overseeing the rest of our professional team in terms of teaching and coaching and helping with their development as well.
Nice. Yeah. Do you do anything formally, or is it more kind of just like, if a pro wants some help, you help them out on a more informal basis?
Yeah, more so informally. Have done some formal stuff in the past in terms of like training days, and then doing a bit more like formalized kind of like just kind of group learning, kind of situational stuff. But it's challenging because, as you know, the season's so busy. So it's easier in the off season, but still just kind of finding that it's a bit more conducive to do it sort of ad hoc and one-on-one and those kind of things. Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
Cool.
So diving into more of the actual coaching side of things, what are the most common mistakes you see in amateur golfers or the beginner golfers as opposed to the more experienced golfers? Like, what are they coming to you with, and what do you see that's most common?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I'm sure there's a million. But if there was like one thing that you see that's most common where we could say, hey, like it's okay that you struggle with these things, it's very normal, but put in X number of hours, X number of drills, whatever it is, and you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah. I think probably, and this is like almost like across the board, would just be sort of overall like misconceptions about why the ball does what it does.
Basic ball flight.
Basic ball flight laws. And you miss hit a shot, and then we hear like, I lifted my head, or those kinds of things that just make you cringe, or like, just random things that may have caused the ball to do what it does. And I think like pretty much like the biggest learnings are like just why the ball does what it does. Just basics in terms of even just like club face and even contact. I kind of like say to everyone, it's just, you're not going to know, especially when you're playing. And you've probably had this situation yourself, where maybe you're like playing with a member and they hit a bad shot, and then they look over to you and they're like, "What did I do there?" And,
I don't know.
and usually I'm like, I wasn't looking. I'm trying to, usually it's like in the middle of a round together, and I have to focus on my own round as well. I'm like, I have no idea. It all happens so fast, and there's a reason why we use like slow motion video and technology and stuff like that. But I did see the ball flight, and I can pretty much tell you exactly what happened.
Right.
Was it fat or was it thin? Did it go right or did it go left? And so like, you can't know what happened in your swing, and especially if we can't see it just at the time and in real time, then there's no way that you're gonna know.
Exactly.
I lifted, I did this, I did that, whatever the heck it might be. But you can know like what happened when the ball and the club met. And I think just like giving people that understanding is the biggest thing, whether it's a beginner or, sometimes like the really good golfers too also have really limited knowledge of why things happen. But then you can kind of like have almost like a playbook for making it better, or like I always think like troubleshooting manual, so like this happened, it's almost, if your computer freezes, and you're like, okay, I've got 3 things. I do like Control Alt Delete, and then nope, that didn't work. You don't just like hit a bunch of random buttons. You have these like steps, and then the last one being like,
shut it off.
Shut it off. You unplug it. So like, can you have that sort of troubleshooting? My ball went right. Okay, I know why it went right, and I have like, so it went right. The club face was, call it, pointed a little bit too far right to some degree. And then I have my like 1, 2, maybe 3 like solutions, but like you're gonna go to those solutions
first.
Yeah, not just going through the Rolodex of everything you heard on YouTube and the Golf Channel and
Death spiral.
Yeah.
I think what you said about better players too, not necessarily having understanding, that was a big thing for me early in my coaching days, because like I would get a little intimidated coaching better players, right? And then you talk to them and you're like, oh, like very little, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can help this person, right? But like, you assume better players know a lot more than they do, I think, a lot of times. Some of them obviously are very smart about their golf swings, but other ones are like, oh, you need to be educated here.
I think even tour pros, like, they don't really know what's going on a lot of the time with their swing. Or like if you listen to some of the advice that they may give in, on
those clinics,
like a clinic or whatever, it's kind of, that's great. That's like the way that you think and that you do things, but it's not something that we would, as coaches, like probably ever say. Yeah,
they only know what feels work for them, right? They don't know maybe how to communicate what's proper or like the best way to do something.
It kind of just works for them, and they're just doing it, and they're just like, well, just do this and then it'll happen, right? But you can't really just shove that onto someone who doesn't really understand, right? So just a quick question to tie into that. In terms of technology, do you think that, and I know there's a fine line of how much technology you should use and when to use it and who to use it with, but do you think that we've become, as coaches or even as instructors and our students, do you think they're reliant on technology and they become too dependent on it, and then they get in their own head and now they start spiraling, and now they have no trust within themselves to get up and hit a good shot? They're just like, well, look at my numbers, that's not optimal. It's like, but the ball went straight. So how do you kind of differentiate and show them, like, let's just put this away and just focus on what the ball's doing and a good outcome?
Yeah, it is challenging sometimes. And I think that's our job as like coaches to educate people on, like, there are a lot of ways that basically like the ball can go straight. Essentially, like we need to have the kind of the face and the path match up for the most part, and it doesn't need to look like zero degrees, or like perfectly square. So I think like if we've done a good job, then hopefully they understand it, but certainly, and especially like I think during the winter, when people are indoors and like seeing the numbers right in front of them, then you can sometimes get just too overwhelmed. And I do it the same in my swing too, where it's like, you're just trying to get a number to a certain spot and like almost, in a little bit of that spiral. But I do think that it's great to have that feedback, and it just makes like, it makes our jobs a lot easier in terms of knowing what's going on and how to correct it, and then also for the player to have that feedback immediately to say like, you're making a change, or you're not making a change, or you need to feel way more of this, and like just to correlate what they're doing with actual results, essentially. Results
that aren't the ball, right? Because oftentimes the ball will go squirrely, but the method is a little better, right, in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's so much easier, like, I think during the winter, and I'm sure that you both find this, like, just teaching inside and not worrying about where the ball goes, it's that much easier to make those changes, just you know, as soon as you get out on the range and we're in that time where like we're starting to move outside, there's just so many distractions out there, and you watch the ball and it doesn't go how you want, and then kind of it's like almost abandoned ship. It's harder to get, I think, some of that buy-in sometimes as to like where we want to move the needle.
Especially if they're playing like the next day or the next week, right? Like
Yeah.
it's hard to sell someone on long-term change when it's like, I gotta go play with my buddies next week, right?
Yeah.
Versus in the Sims, it's like, it doesn't really matter. If you're playing sim golf, people don't care as much about the result, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does mental stuff tie into your coaching? Are you heavy on that in certain times of year? Do you kind of integrate it, or is it do you kind of set it aside, teach it separately type of thing?
Certainly more like in season, I would say, because it's just, you know, I would almost, you know, the way that I look at probably the winter or the off season is more like an opportunity for a lot of people to make like technical improvements, and it's hard, you know, in a sim you're probably not dealing with all the anxieties and stuff that go along. You might be. I think I do a little bit, but you're not dealing with all those things that come with like playing on the course. So I probably don't do too much on like the mental side during like the winter. But then certainly it's just such a critical piece of it when we're playing that I'd say like at Credit Valley, just try to do some like kind of group stuff on it. So that would be, you know, some clinics that might be like tied into more of those like mental aspects, and then tying kind of always like relaying it in like one-on-one coaching sessions, depending on the person. And then you know, it's maybe not as applicable if somebody just comes to you for a lesson and they want to, you know, I've got like a slice and I have a tea time in 45 minutes and you've got to fix that. You're probably not talking about it, but like certainly with like a longer term client, it's just such a big piece of it. And so as a player myself, I know like, you know, recognize the importance of it. And I think it's one of those areas where it's like, you do need to put in work, but it really doesn't, like, everybody could be better on the mental side.
Yeah.
Versus requiring like physical skill.
Yeah, it's less physically taxing. You could do it in your car on the way home, a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You can find opportunities to practice those skills a lot easier than having to go out to the range or...
Yeah, it's just like, I want to say like, it's like getting better for free, almost.
Right.
Because there's no reason why we couldn't all do something.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Nice.
Awesome. Tying into that mental side of things, you have your golfers that like to be on the driving range and they come to you and they say, man, like I can stripe it on the driving range. Once they get on the course, it goes this way, it goes that way. So how do you coach someone to say, here's your game on the range, here's your game on the course, just mush them together and just trust that your game will be just fine? And I know it's different, right? Because we just spoke about mental game and everything, but like what are your kind of strategies or tips and tricks on how to just say, take that to there and you'll be fine?
I think probably trying to make practice on the range look closer to practice on the course.
Right.
Being able to, you know, the thing that changes really when you go from the range to the course, or like in your case in the case of Credit Valley, basically like across the driveway, is just there's so much added pressure, and there's the anxiety, and we're trying to perform, and so I think that if you can try to make your practice induce some of that pressure and like anxiety, then we're gonna perform better, you know, under those conditions when you're playing. So like, you know, again, there's a time and a place for hitting those like 57 irons in a row if you're working on something in your swing, but then, you know, everybody's going to fall into a groove if you hit 57 irons in a row. Eventually they're going to start to look pretty good, probably, or at least better than they started with. But that has absolutely almost no relevance when you're playing and you've got to switch clubs every time and you've got different lies. And so like,
Right.
you know, I think I try to educate my students on the fact that, you know, kind of how they should practice and how it's going to tie into moving or you know, taking that practice to the course and taking the skills that they've learned, and the fact that, you know, maybe we'll do a block of like kind of, we'll call it like a block practice, whatever they're working on, but then we're gonna change it up, and it might be tying like a score to something in practice, some way, and they're not going to see the results as much, right?
Right.
You know,
Performance will go down.
the performance is going to go down, and so like again, I think it's our job to educate players to say, this is what you can expect, and so don't be concerned if, you know, you kind of, your performance drops.
Sure.
That's the expectation, and it's going to make you better in the long run.
And if this sounds familiar to you, it's because we had the exact same conversation last week with J.F. Richard, right? So, like, you know, if you keep hearing the same stuff, maybe you should
Just try it.
think about it, right?
Yeah.
They didn't pay me to say that.
Yeah, no, we didn't prompt her other than the question. So, you know, I think definitely for the members who are listening and watching out there, just pay attention to not only what you're practicing, but how you're practicing. Your method is just as important as the content of what you're practicing, right? For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I needed to preach a little.
Yeah.
Look directly at her.
Right at the camera.
Don't hit 57 irons in a row,
Yeah.
Just change it up a little bit.
or at least take a minute in between each of those 7 irons.
Yeah, so JF put it kind of like block practice, work on your mechanics, and then he called it transfer practice. So, you know, trying to add some variability, and then he had kind of performance practice, which is like the full randomized, do your routine every time type of practice.
Yeah.
So I really like that kind of 3 stages, and, you know, be really intentional in each stage, so you're getting bang for your buck in terms of timing and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever do on-course lessons as well?
Yeah.
Just bring them out there and be like, okay, here you go. Now we're gonna work on it this way.
Yeah, I love on-course stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just...
It puts it into perspective.
It does, yeah. There's just so much more that happens in golf than what happens on the range, and so
Yeah.
and it is neat to see, you know, how does that transfer from the range to the course, and a lot of the time I would say I probably don't do too much in terms of like the technical stuff on course, and it's more just playing and situational, and it might be more of that like mental
Right.
game and.
Course management strategy.
Yeah,
things like
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that.
More low-hanging fruit, right? Like things you can, like you said earlier, it's
Yeah.
free. You can get better for free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It is. It's like the strategy part is getting better for free. Like that's
Yeah.
just thinking differently and being smarter about how you play is like probably, you know, I think everybody could get better that way.
Yeah.
And that's literally free. It doesn't take any time.
Right.
Right. And kind of working with what you have too, right? Like if someone is working through something, take your swing, we're working through it, hit it, and if your ball ends up behind a tree, that's okay. Like we're just gonna find a way to get you back in the fairway and just use what you have, right? We're not gonna try and change your swing on the driving range just for that, right? We're gonna put it into action, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other words of wisdom for the members out there? Like, I guess if I had one last question, I do know you're like biomechanics specialty, right? So when it comes to biomechanics in golf, is there anything you see a lot in terms of like safety when people are swinging? Like big pet peeve of mine is people come and just start firing 7 irons at full speed as soon as they get to the range, right? And so I'm always
Start with a
like,
wedge.
here's your sand wedge. You know.
Let's go with half swings.
So is there anything like that, or ways people can protect their backs, their hips? Anything common that you see, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's like, it's just, I hate it as well when there's no warm-up. Like, just call it like warm-up before the warm-up. So ripping 7 irons at full speed is probably a good way to hurt yourself.
Yes.
And doing some sort of like a dynamic warm-up would be great. If you can, there's a gym, very nice gym facility here. Popping in there for like 10 minutes before your round, or just doing something on the range. You're not going to look silly. The best players in the world do this for a reason, and it's only going to help you. So I think like doing just some movement, some basic stretches before you play is great, and then just kind of like trying to move better. So if you can do something as simple as like a TPI, Titles Performance Institute, like screen, is really basic, and just knowing like where your limitations are and areas that you can get better, either to move better, which kind of increases your ceiling, obviously. If you've got some sort of physical limitation, let's call it maybe your back, like basically your T-spine doesn't rotate very well. Something like that, where you could probably very easily improve that with a little bit of movement, and working with a trainer, or just doing some basic exercises that you could find online wouldn't be bad. And then your ceiling goes up because you can do a lot more versus somebody who comes to you with limited range of motion, and you're stuck with what you've got. So definitely, there's definitely a lot of correlation to injury, and we want everybody to play better and play longer and enjoy themselves. And if you're injured, it's not going to be good for anyone. So, move better.
Move better.
Move
Okay.
better.
Do you think?
Move often and move better.
Do you think people don't warm up like that on the range because they're embarrassed to do it? Like, or is it more just like they're impatient, they want to hit balls, they're excited to start their day?
I don't know. Probably more impatient than
Just
anything.
ready to rock.
Plus, you look at you've got people who are, zooming into the parking lot, slamming their trunk, trying to hit, 20 balls in 2 minutes, and then that's it. And I would rather spend those 2 minutes just stretching than hitting balls.
Yeah.
Right.
In my opinion. I think you're going to be better off for it, and you're going to probably feel like you've hit a bucket of balls by the time you do a bit of a dynamic stretch.
Yeah, I think in those 2 or 5 minutes, you're not learning to play golf, right? So do you need to hit golf balls? No, you know how to play golf. You just need to get your body ready to play golf. Right?
Yeah.
There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
I think people are, even in a 5-minute warm-up, they're working on their technique, which is insane to me, right? You're not going to get any better in those 5 minutes. So just get loose and then go to the tee and have fun, right?
Yeah. It also, what happens if you chunk a whole bunch of shots in those 5 minutes, and your anxiety has gone way up, and you're like, oh gosh, this is gonna turn out terribly. I would rather just go through the routine. And to me, that it's a routine, and it makes things you do it all the time. So if you just get into the routine of stretching, and then that to me produces some comfort. Right. So I feel more relaxed after I've done it, versus I hate the feeling of rushing to the tee. And then whether the game means anything or not, my heart's racing a little bit because I'm trying to get there on time, and nothing ever goes well, and you're stiff. Just do the routine, calms you down.
Yep.
Warms you up.
Do you do?
Good to go.
Maybe you could tell us a couple things you do specifically. Do you use bands or anything like that before you play?
I just use a club. And I do I literally do the same thing every single time. Do some kind of leg swings, kind of forward and back and side to side, and some of this stuff with the club, and get a little bit more like a golf swing. And I think that especially for the average player, who we know that you don't have a lot of time and that kind of thing, and to make it as simple as possible. Mm-hmm. And here you've already got a club in your bag.
Yeah. No extra equipment.
No extra equipment. Could a band be better? Sure. But
Right.
Is it realistic?
yeah, is it realistic? How many people do you see warming up with bands on the range?
Yeah.
One.
One.
Dr. Veskin. You do it every
True.
time. Good job.
Good job.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. One.
One.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Do you have anything else you wanted to ask Casey?
No, I think we've gotten everything we need. Thank you again for sharing
Thanks for having me.
everything. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome.
So by the time this comes out, I think our golf course at Mississauga will be open,
Yep.
and I'm sure Credit Valley will be in a similar timeline as us. So enjoy the golf season.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Yeah, we'll see you in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. We'll come up for air around September. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching or listening. We're really excited for the golf season. We're
Yep.
going to come out with some more episodes. We'll probably start shooting out on the driving range when we get some nice weather.
Yep.
So until then, we will see you next time. Enjoy your early season golfing, everybody.